Turn up your radio wherever you at. We about to bring it.
Street Beat.
Yeah.
With Tony B.
For the next hour, Tony B will give you a chance to tackle local, national, and international issues that affect your community.
Street Beat. Street Beat. Who, Tony?
Welcome to this edition of Street Beat. It's me, your host, Tony B. We are going to be continuing our conversation about the impact of the coronavirus on South Seattle. And I have joining me the Honorable Mayor of the City of Seattle, Ginny Durkan. Are you there with us?
I am. Thank you so much for letting me talk to your listeners today.
Well, I appreciate you doing this, and there are a number of things, a myriad of things that are surrounding the coronavirus, and I think that you know where I'm coming from. I'm going to be interested in knowing specifically about the impact and what's being done for the residents, the businesses of South Seattle.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So we knew, it's hard to believe that it's been less than 3 weeks. It's only been about 2.5 weeks since we got the first case in King County. And since that time, it has really overtaken, I think, so much of our area. We knew going in, there were two things we were focused on. One was to protect the people that were most vulnerable from a health situation. But the second is to protect those who are most vulnerable in our economic. And South Seattle has disproportionately been left out of some of the prosperity that our city has been building. And we knew, for example, that there were more kids on free and reduced lunch. There were small businesses that were owned by communities of color and immigrants and refugees. So the first programs we designed and implemented have been really focused on those communities and those individuals. So, for example, we put a moratorium first on any residential evictions so people knew they would not lose their homes. We then put a moratorium on the evictions of small businesses and nonprofits because it's our community-based organizations that really are going to be the front lines of serving communities like South Seattle. We made sure that everyone knew that their power would not be cut off or their utilities, and worked with the other companies the city did not control. So we got a lot of cooperation. People will keep their lights, their power, their gas through this crisis so that they know not only do they have a place to live, but that it will be a place that will be shelter for them. We also wanted to do a number of things to kind of stabilize our small businesses. We created a stabilization fund for our micro businesses to give them some resilience through this and are putting funds directly to that. And then this week we're able to, partnering with Safeway, did a program to put grocery vouchers in the hands of people. And we'll be able to help 6,000 families with $800 of grocery vouchers so they can use that money directly to feed their people. We're also have been working with, we have a really great senior center down there, but we had to cancel our senior programming both at the Central Area Senior Center and the South Seattle Senior Center. So we stood up a meal program because for some of those seniors, it wasn't just about community, which was so important. It was their only meal. So we've been really trying to work to see if we can build some kind of resiliency into the community and support those community-based organizations, which really are the front lines for so many people.
And I appreciate you being prepared to talk about our community. Can you talk about some of the providers or some of the individuals, some of the entities, some of the groups that you've communicated with so that you are getting an actual fairly good idea about how the people of our community are being impacted?
Yeah, so we're trying to open as many avenues as we can. Obviously, we talked to the council members representing South Seattle and also other parts of the city that have those communities that are most prone for dislocation. So we've been working through Tammy Morales as well, keeping an eye. We're also working with the small businesses throughout the whole Rainier Valley and Columbia City and Central District to make sure that we are staying in touch with what's happening on the ground. We're also working with some of the nonprofits and organizations that both house people and also provide some of those critical links that they need. So we're trying to create kind of a spoken wheel where we really are trying to both push information to and get information back from those community-based organizations. And it's happening at every level of the city. Primarily, our Department of Neighborhoods has taken the laboring oar to stay in touch with those community organizations. And then we've also, through the mayor's office, been doing, concerted outreach as well as educational things, roundtables for different groups so that they could have the information and get it out to the people they serve.
And I'm going to ask you a question. You may or you may not have the answer, and that's just fine. But, again, on behalf of the community, one of the things that we're concerned about is the lack of information that we have about who has the coronavirus, what testing has been done, how members of our community can get this type of information. There are a lot of myths going on around here. One of them, as an example, is that there are a lot of black folks who think that they can't get the coronavirus because because they're black. And then again, we're concerned about our Asian community that may be subject to racism during this time. And so, do you have any idea of the numbers when it comes to who has been infected, what that percentage looks like, basically in our community of South Seattle, or is that something that's not known yet?
So we don't know broadly, but that's a really good question because I think that there are so many rumors and myths and misunderstanding, and a lot of it fueled by understandable anxiety and fear and mixed messages. So a couple things I think that are really important. This virus knows no bounds. It will infect anybody it can. And there is no cure for it, nor is there any vaccination. The only way we can stop the spread of this virus is to not have contact with people that are infected. We think, based on the science, that the virus travels most commonly through coughs, sneezes, things like that, and can travel no more than about 6 feet. That's why we have this thing called social distancing. We also know that if you touch something that is infected, if you wash your hands regularly and don't touch your face, you'll be better for not getting infected. But we're seeing infections in every community. Unfortunately, the people who are most vulnerable are people who are seniors, your elders, your aunties. They're the ones that we really need to cut down on seeing anybody. The mortality rate is significantly higher in people who are older. So we really have to protect our seniors, keep them at home, have them less communication with other people physically. So it will, and I want to also, your question about our Asian community, really spot on. I think our president has done an incredible disservice to continually refer to this as a Chinese virus. This is not a virus that has any nationality, and it will infect anyone. And there's been so much stigmatization around this right before we had our first known cases, but after the outbreaks in China. My whole cabinet met and had dim sum down in Chinatown International District. It was a fabulous meal. We had great companionship. Nobody got sick. And so it's really important for people to know that this is a virus that can go after any of us, and the absolute best way we can do to prevent that from happening is to have that social distance, to really reduce our contacts with anybody, and to practice good hygiene.
So we do know that a member of our community, owner of the Leschi Market, passed away. We do know that there are people in Rainier Beach, one of who will be joining us tomorrow, who is infected with the coronavirus. So at this point, there really are no numbers or no indicators that you can share with us about who's been impacted and what that virus looks like as far as impacting our community and who may have it and may not have it?
Yeah, so let me say a little bit about that. The official numbers are in the general King County area is that we have 562 confirmed cases and 56 deaths. But one of the things that Seattle has going for it is we have some of the world's preeminent health researchers here, and they came together, the University of Washington, the Gates Foundation, the Fred Hutchinson, and they were actually already able to type the genome of the virus, to take a number of the tests that run positive, and to do modeling on how quickly it would spread. One reason there is 762 cases is we just have not had enough testing. If you look like South Korea, for example, They have done broad-based testing where almost everybody gets tested. Here, a tiny fraction of people. We think the best science says that though the tests are only 562, that over 2,000 people in our community are infected. So a couple things about that. I say that not to scare people, but I say that for a couple reasons. One is everyone should know that the vast majority of people who get COVID will survive and recover and do fine. The mortality rates are somewhere between 1% to 3%, which means that 99 to 97% of people are going to get it and recover. And they think about 80% of the people will have the most mild symptoms, no distinguish between how you feel like that and a really bad case of the flu. But for the fraction that are impacted, they're impacted significantly. And that's why we really have to reduce our contact with people. People should assume that anywhere they go, someone might have it, and they might not be showing any symptoms. Particularly young people tend to get it and not show symptoms. And so you should assume people have it, so you got to keep your distance. No more hugging and handshakes like we're used to. No more kind of groups, just hanging out together. We really got to keep our distance, and we've got to make sure we're vigilant about washing our hands and not getting your hands near your face, because that's how you can pass it to yourself.
And, Mayor Durkan, I think that is fantastic information, and I appreciate you sharing it. But again, my focus is on if you have information about South Seattle. I know that Kaiser apparently has come up with a potential vaccine that is being tested. We have a Kaiser, right? I think it's on 42nd and Rainier. Do you have any information about whether those vaccines will be available to the communities of South Seattle, and how the decisions will be made about who's going to potentially get to be tested for that vaccine?
Right now, they're doing a trial test to see if they can test the vaccine. But most new viruses we have, they have to have many trial runs before they find one that works. Every scientist that I've talked to says we are at least a year to 18 months away from even having a vaccine that will work.
And I appreciate you coming, and I know our time is limited, so I'll just give you a couple of more questions at once that you can answer. One is the concern that our students are falling behind. There were already definitely differences in what was going on educationally, and so you have some students who are able to work from home and they're attending classes virtually. And I'm concerned about Franklin, Rainier Beach, Mercer, Cleveland, Aki-Karosi. Do you know if there's anything specific being done to make sure that this just doesn't turn into an extended spring break specifically for our students with the educational department? Is there anything being done to make sure that they're getting classes at home, that parents are getting information so that they can assist? Because, we have seniors who may not be finishing up their school year. We have students who may not be finishing up this school year from other grades, and other students are getting this education. Can you tell me if there's anything that's really being done specific to South Seattle to making sure that our students catch up? And then the other question would be, again, the homeless and unsheltered who live in this community. Is there anything specific being done to ensure the safety of that community, and then again the community at large, because of folks who can't isolate or quarantine?
Yeah, so those are all excellent questions. As you know, the school district is its own governmental entity, but we've been working with them. I think they announced today that they are going to be rolling out online classes for those who can do it, and for those that can't, they have set up a number of feeding places for kids who are on free and reduced lunch, and they will provide at those same locations classroom curriculum that kids can do at home, and then I think bring back to that. But the Seattle School District has a website up and available on that, I am told. I haven't gone to it myself. So I think the school district is hoping to do that for kids in South Seattle and the whole Seattle Public Schools. On the people experiencing homelessness, we have been working around the clock with King County, with the governor's office, and with federal people trying to get more resources. Seattle has stood up hundreds of new shelter beds because a number of our shelters were overcrowded, and we had to make sure that people experiencing homelessness could practice some of the same social distancing, to have some space between them and the people next to them. So we stood up new shelters to basically de-densify the ones that existed. At the same time, we are standing up with King County a series of shelters throughout the county and Seattle that would be able to take people who are either showing symptoms or testing positive for COVID. So there'll be isolation places as well as quarantine places. So we're doing that very quickly. I was on the phone with the governor today and emphasizing to him that we needed to devote significant services. That Seattle and King County, we're going to be able to stand up probably over 1,000 new shelter and quarantine beds for people experiencing homelessness, but that we needed the state to step in and do more too, because we know that those are some of our most vulnerable people in the city of Seattle, and we need to protect them. And if any of them start to become sick, it could put an incredible burden on our healthcare providers as well. I do want to point out to your listeners that the Department of Neighborhoods is having a webinar every day, every Friday, from 2:30 to 4 o'clock, where they can find out what's happening in different parts of Seattle around COVID and the services that are available. And we'll send you that number and the website so you can give it to your listeners.
Mayor Durkan, I do appreciate you coming on today. And again, you've always been responsive when I've called on you. And I want you to know that the door is always open to you here at Rainier Avenue Radio. And as this pandemic continues, we hope to hear more and have you talk directly to our listeners. I want to give you the opportunity for final words here, if there's anything that you'd like to share. And my thing is, I know there may be, this may have to be equitable, but I just want to put my bid in to make sure that there is a certain amount of money allocated to businesses in South Seattle during this recovery effort. There are a lot of folks who own businesses because they choose not to work, or they want to own their business because of a number of reasons associated with getting a job. Maybe it's a language barrier, or again, just other things that they don't want to experience. So I don't know how that money will be divvied up, and I know that there is a task force that is in place to do that. And so I just want to make sure that we get ours when that money is divvied up. But I want to give you a chance here for final words, and thank you again for coming on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the service you're doing for your listeners. I'm glad you brought up our task force, because we have former Governor Gary Locke, who used to be the representative from South Seattle and then went on to be governor, and Bruce Harrell, who was the longtime city council co-chairing that, to make sure that we build as much aid and direction and resiliency as we can to the people who need it most. And I want to tell your listeners, look, I know this is a scary time. People, you yourself are losing your jobs. You're worried about whether your family is going to stay safe. We will get through this. It is going to be hard, and all of us are going to know people who get sick. And the only way we get through this is if we really step up for those neighbors and friends who need it the most. And as your mayor, I can promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you are not forgotten, that we take care of you, and that when we come out of this, we also don't forget that there's a lot more work to be done.
Thank you, Mayor Durkan, for joining us. And you can get a show on Rainier Avenue Radio just like everybody else, right?
That's right. And I tell you, thanks for having me on. You guys are the best.
Thank you. And thanks for joining us.
I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm. That was Mayor Durkan from the city of Seattle. And very busy, but she definitely took the time to come with us here on our radio station. And I'm telling you, there's some other folks who I've called who haven't called me back. There's some of them who I've contacted who don't call me back once they answer the phone initially. But I do understand that people are busy, but I hope that you know, as listeners, at Rainier Avenue Radio, we represent the corridor from I-90 up to, just past Rainier Beach, but everywhere along Rainier Avenue is of concern to us. And so that's what we do. And we're also concerned, obviously, about surrounding communities as well, because we are all in this together. This is a time where communities are going to bond together. I can tell you that I believe it is on Wednesday. Wednesday, I think at 1 o'clock, Council Member Tammy Morales, who Mayor Durkan just mentioned, will be here. And she is the District 2 council member. She'll be here to talk with us and give us more in-depth information about what's going on with South Seattle and again, the future of South Seattle as we rebuild from this. And then a little later this week, next week as well, Mayor Greg Wheeler from Bremerton is going to be joining us to talk about the impact of the coronavirus in Bremerton. We're going to share information, of course, from members of our community, but we're also going to bring some other communities in as well so that you can hear what's going on in some other places. Now, with that in mind, tomorrow is the day we will be giving away our survival kits. And our survival kits consist of toilet paper, soup, toilet paper because for some reason people just keep buying it out everywhere. I don't understand, but if it's in need, we will provide it. And then we're also going to be giving away soup. You know, soup is something that has been working against the flu for decades. It's, you know, proven that a lot of healing elements in it. So we're going to give you soup. Don't be concerned. My producer's in here. I've just been talking. But, you know, that's what happens with the pandemic. You hear somebody cough, you hear somebody sneeze. It takes on a different take than it used to. So let's just make sure that we're kind to each other during this process. And we're also giving away harmonicas. Why? Because I think that music is food for the soul. And so we're going to give you toilet paper. We're going to give you soup and harmonicas. Just email us at rainieravenueradio.world@gmail.com if you'd like one of our survival kits, and we'd be happy to hook you up with toilet paper, also, again, harmonicas, and then the soup as well. Tomorrow from 1 to 3, we're going to continue to do our special on the coronavirus, where we're going to be bringing in members of our community. Tomorrow you'll get to hear from Ty Dow from Rainier Beach. He has the coronavirus and is recovering. He's going to be here to tell us about his experiences with it. Many of you may not have even known. He was very courageous in wanting to get the word out about this so that people that he'd come in contact with would know, because he didn't know for a while. He's going to tell us about his symptoms and just tell him about the process of going through this. Also joining us tomorrow will be a representative. I think it's Saida, coming from the Somali Youth and Family Club, who's partnering with us to help us get information out in, I think, 10 different languages. So thank you to the Somali Youth and Family Club for a partnership. There'll be someone here from, at least on the phone, that's how we're doing it. They'll be joining us tomorrow. There'll also be someone here. You heard Mayor Durkan mention Safeway. We're going to have a regional representative from Safeway here to talk about the impact that this has had on the South Seattle stores, their emergency plan in case this gets worse, and then also talk about their employees, because those folks have to be there. And again, whatever's coming through the store, whether folks have been tested or not, they're kind of on the front lines to make sure that we can try and get toilet paper and food, but apparently toilet paper and food at Safeway. So that's tomorrow. Also joining us will be the executive director of the Seattle Public Schools Athletic Department, Mr. Pat McCarthy. We're going to talk to you about how sports have been impacted by high school from on the high school level, and what that looks like for student athletes. You know, there may be some student athletes in this upcoming spring sports that were potentially looking at getting college scholarships, and now that sport isn't going to be there. There's some folks who are looking at finishing out their senior years, and now they're not going to get that opportunity. Maybe they will. We'll see how this shakes out. Also joining us will be someone from the Seattle Foundation to talk about how they're dispersing the money for the grants that they have, and just a whole more about that process. There'll be someone here from the Artist Trust Foundation to talk about the impact from artists. There'll also be the director of the Office of Art and Culture. He'll be joining us. Theo from Island Soul will be here to talk about the impact that this has had on his restaurant. And then also Tia from the Royal Room. I know you guys know these two places if you know anything about Columbia City. She'll be here to talk to us about the impact that this has had on her establishment as well. Deshaun Jackson will be back from John Muir Elementary School. If you're unaware, you can catch him now on a show that's airing where he talked about the impact that this was having on John Muir Elementary School. He's going to be back here to give us an update. I think there's a couple more folks, but I don't remember. But that's from 1 to 3 tomorrow. You'll hear from members of our community, from businesses in our community, from service providers in our community, about what's happening in South Seattle. So, and the other thing about that is, if you have any questions, if you want your voice heard, we can make that happen. We can get you on the phone. If you have a circumstance, this is what it's all about. At Rainier Avenue Radio, we have over 70 programs that are produced by members of our community. We do shows in news, shows in music, shows in sports, shows for youth. We're out in the community broadcasting. We've had to cut that part of it off. We broadcast in foreign languages. So if you've got a story that you want to share, hit us up at rainieravenueradio.world@gmail.com, and we will get your story out there as well. That is it. That's all the time that I have. That's going to do it for the kid. We will talk to you tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Until then, remember, on behalf of everyone here at Rainier Avenue Radio, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out. Peace.